I'm very curious. What was kind of the feel at Pac-12 Media Days? Because if Coach Prime was there, Deion Sanders was there, it would have probably been completely different. But you still had the reigning Heisman Trophy winner in attendance. It's almost funny, Bud, that I feel like there was a disappointment that Deion wasn't there. It's like, yeah, this guy over here won the Heisman.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was a pretty good experience. I'd never done Pac-12 Media Day before, and they do it up right. And, like, SEC Media Day, I've done it for 4 days. Just flew out here last night. But this is a better event. You get more access to these guys. You can actually, like, go up and talk to Lincoln Riley. You can get lunch, with basically any coach that you want to get lunch with. You can talk to Caleb Williams and ask them, how their stuff's going. It's not quite so corporate and just micromanaged like with some of the bigger conferences. It was good, though. Like, obviously, we wish Deion well.
Yeah.
Now, I have known Charles Kelly, their defensive coordinator, for quite a long time. We actually have family from the same area. And he kind of thinks they're going to be decent, man. And I looked at Colorado a lot. They're, to me, the ultimate stay healthy team, right? Because I do think the job they have done in the transfer portal with the starter-level players is good. But I also think their depth is probably the worst depth in the Pac-12. Like, the backups, there may be some positions where the backups are just not playable. And that makes sense. If you bring in 70 transfers, I mean, you get one shot at transferring, right? You get your one free transfer. Are you going to sign up to go be a backup somewhere?
Right.
If they bring in a guy in front of you? So Colorado's got to stay healthy, and they may have a chance to exceed their win total, but they also they got to stay healthy early.
Yeah, the other side is that they had a whole bunch of starters that shouldn't have been playing last year.
Yeah.
So I was telling Tim, why I'm so bullish on them over 3.5 is because a lot of these kids are from the southeastern United States. And as the coach at South Florida, I recruited a whole lot of those kids. They didn't all come to South Florida, but like we were in heated battles. So he had some guys that can really play, that love football. But I'm with you. Depth is a major concern. Also, the level of quarterback play in that conference is really good.
It really is. The top 6 teams all have a quarterback situation that I think you feel somewhere between decent to amazing about, right? We'll see what happens with Oregon State. Now, Aiden Childs is a true freshman at Oregon State. I'm not saying he's going to beat out DJ, but it really wouldn't shock me if he did beat out DJU, the Clemson transfer who went to Oregon State. And I'm just going to bet on Chip Kelly figuring it out with one of the 3 quarterbacks that he has in the house. Like, when's the last time Chip Kelly had bad quarterback play at the college level?
It's Garbers. It's the
Dante Moore.
The 5-star recruit. And then they brought the kid from Schlee.
Colin Schlee. Yeah. Colin Schlee, who was a little bit banged up in the spring. And I think they will battle this out. But if Garbers is your floor quarterback at UCLA, I think you feel fairly good. I mean, for me, I did bet some UCLA to make the playoff 40-1, which seems wild, but small unit on that. Their question is O-line depth. But I can paint you a picture with their schedule. If they stay healthy up front, they don't have to dip into that poor, O-line depth.
No Oregon, no Washington.
Right. So maybe they make a run.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. This 2 straight days now, because Colin Wilson was in here yesterday. He's high on UCLA. I had Stanford Steve on my podcast. He's high on UCLA. Now, Stanford Steve, he's not shy about it. He and Chip Kelly are buds. So, but he also has talked to Chip Kelly, and he knows they got the transfer whose name is escaping me, the running back from the MAC.
But the Ball State kid who owns the pet alligator.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just a monster. So they're really intriguing. Real quickly on go ahead. I was just going to say about the Oregon State, because I was listening to your podcast today. You guys were running through. It was a couple episodes ago, but you guys were going through the Pac-12, and the win total you used for Oregon State was 8.5, and I would not play over 8.5. I played over 8 because I'm thinking if they go 8-4. We get a push, and I'm hoping that they get to 9 wins. But I thought it was either you or one of your colleagues made a good point, which is, did we see just the best of Oregon State last year, where they go 10-3? They beat Oregon. I do like the fact that 3 of their toughest games are at home. They avoid USC. Non-con is super manageable there. But what is your take of Oregon State? Because if they had kept Spates, I'd love them.
Yeah.
That's a big loss. He goes to LSU. But, the quarterback position is certainly a question mark with DJU. If he plays like he did at South Bend in November of 2020, they could win a lot of football games.
There's a lot of coaches in this league that you really don't feel comfortable going to the window and betting against. And Jonathan Smith is one of those. The guy wins basically everywhere he goes. They don't beat themselves. They don't make mistakes. Jim Mahalzik's one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. And they just – there's no negative plays. They're never in that 3rd and 12, basically, because they do such a good job of staying ahead of the chains. But that was my point on the show was, if just power ratings historically, right? if you're like on like a 30 to negative 30, when's the last time that Oregon State has legitimately played as like a 20 plus? Because if you're projecting them to win 10 or 11 ball games with their schedule, you kind of have to jack them up to like a 20. And I'm like, man, if you're going to be a 20, I want to see a lot of NFL players, not just a well-coached team. I want to see a real difference maker at quarterback. And the reports on Spates at LSU are really good.
I know.
Like LSU thinks they got a stud in Spates. And how many LSU quality stud SC linebackers are on that Oregon State roster? My guess is they miss him a little bit.
Well, Blue Adams is my good friend. He's a DB coach there. He loves their defense this year. Said they will miss Spates, but he feels like they will take a step up, another year in the system. They're going to be able to run the ball. Martinez is an outstanding back.
O-line is.
I actually had Deshaun Fenwick committed to South Florida, and then South Carolina came in and snatched him. Now, ultimately, he's at Oregon State, so he's a Florida kid that I know can play. So they get both of their top two runners. I'm presuming they're going to be some kind of run-based, QB run-based game with DJ.
I think they'll run DJ if he ends up being a guy, yeah. And they had terrible quarterback play last year.
Terrible. I was looking at it. It was awful.
It's going to upgrade. I mean, the two kids they were playing they weren't not only like not upper tier Pac-12, they just were really not Pac-12 quality for many of the games.
16 and 13, touchdown, interception. They're two guys that played most of the year.
Yeah, I mean, look,
and that's mostly a play-action ball club. It's not like you're dropping back a ton. That's pretty bad.
We're talking to Bud Elliott joining us in studio. On the other side of the break, we'll kind of hit on just more big picture stuff, but I want to keep focusing on the Pac-12. You were there today. We played this clip of Kyle Whittingham just a moment ago where he was asked about being picked third, and you could see the gears going like, yes, I'm going to use this as motivation. We're the two-time champs, and you're doubting us. What do you make of Utah this year? Obviously, they lose Kincaid, but Brent Keithy was, I believe, the starter prior to his injury. Cam Rising's back, but is he 100% healthy with the ACL? So what do you make of Utah? Florida at Baylor in the non-con. You don't miss any of the layups, or you don't miss any of the big boys, I should say. They miss Stanford, they miss Washington State. So what do you make, Bud, of Utah?
So I watched Cam Rising get up on the stage. I watched him walk around in the lobby, like not in a creepy way, but kind of creepy. You know what I mean? Like you're looking. Is
there a little limp there? Yeah.
Is he got a brace on? From what I could see, no brace, no limp. Got up the stairs of the stage, no problem. He told me he's been throwing. Right, I asked him. Utah is an interesting ball club because last year they were, at times, a little more finesse throughout the year than you had seen them. They used to just pound you physically. This year, I think they're back to that. And I'll give credit to Phil Steele. He was on a radio show I was listening to, and he said that Whittingham challenged him to find a team who is better on both lines of scrimmage in the country. I'm like, okay, that's some confidence in your big boys across both sides of the ball. I think they're going to live in 12 personnel, honestly. They're really confident in both of their tight ends. I'm not sure they're great in the throw game. Like the receivers.
Deshaun Vale is good, but they lose Kincaid. So
yeah. The other tight end they got, they're excited about.
Yeah, that's what Tim was saying earlier.
The kid who killed USC in the championship game. And I think they'll be much better up front defensively. Secondary, there's some concerns. Losing Clark Phillips was a really good player.
What do you make of USC's defense? Very busy in the portal.
I think they upgraded to competent at a bare minimum.
Yeah, that's fair.
Bear Alexander's a Georgia-level player. Yeah. Now, there may have been some attitude issues or whatever there that they were not totally sad to see him go, but when he's right, he's a disruptive guy. You just don't see a lot of guys built like him anywhere, much less out here on the West Coast. Mason Cobb's a nice addition for them. I think they added a difference maker relative to what they had at every level of the defense, and I would expect them to be a lot better up front.
So, as we take a step back, I guess real quickly before we put a bow on the Pac-12, right now, if I took $100 out of Sean's pocket and I said, go make a bet for me, Bud, on the Pac-12, what team would you bet on?
I might go Oregon, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like I think they've done a really nice job in the transfer portal. I don't anticipate quite as big of an offensive line drop-off as maybe some folks do. I think they did a nice job there, mining the portal for some important replacements. I really like what they have at receiver, and I think they made some upgrades on the D-line. Oregon is a team that not a lot of people seem to be talking about in the Pac-12. It's USC, can they take the final step? Right. Can Utah repeat? Can Washington level up? Is Oregon State is a really, sexy sleeper pick? I didn't hear a lot of Oregon today. I'm like, man, Oregon seems to make good coaching hires. I like Will Stein.
I was going to say, what do you think the drop-off is? Or is there, what is the – Bo Nix and Kenny Dillingham obviously have a rapport. He leaves to go to Arizona State. You bring in the UTSA offensive coordinator Stein. Is there a drop-off, Bud?
I'm not projecting a drop-off.
Okay.
I thought Will Stein did a great job at UTSA. And look, you never know how it's going to work, obviously, but I think they should be able to operate on the same level, and I do believe they will be better on defense this year than they were last year.
It'll be interesting for me. Dillingham got something out of Bo Nix that we never saw at Auburn.
Yeah.
Auburn, he was a football player, not a quarterback. There were stretches where Bo really looked like a quarterback. The system that Stein comes from at UTSA is more Art Briles centric than it is what
they
run at Oregon. So it'll be interesting for me, how does that fit? But only time will tell.
And Dillingham was Nix's quarterback coach at Auburn before he got on Mike Norvell's staff in Tallahassee. Mm-hmm. So like he definitely knew how to hit the ground running there. I talked to Nix today. That's a man playing college football, right?
Yeah.
Like just an older guy.
Oh yeah, he's been in college 12 years.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
You know how it is.
I mean, he opened up his career against Oregon, right?
He's been in school long enough, Tim, to hold all the records at Auburn and Oregon. Like he put in 4 years in each one of them.
I mean, I'm just surprised that Holton Ahlers still isn't at East Carolina. I mean, that dude I think was there for about a decade and a half. Bud Elliott hanging with us here in studio at Bud Elliott 3 on Twitter. Of course, the Cover 3 podcast, wherever you get your podcast, CBS Sports, 247 Sports. You mentioned Tallahassee. You know the ins and outs of Florida State incredibly well. I can't remember the last time there was this much hype. I mean, it's not that long ago. They won a title, 10 years ago. But Norvell seems to have gotten this team kind of rolling. They ended the season on a high note, and here they are. National championship buzz. Can they win the ACC? No bigger game than them playing LSU in Orlando that Sunday night to start the season. So, Bud, you look at Florida State, 10 wins or so, 9.5. What do you expect from Florida State, and would you look ACC future, make the playoff, bet them against LSU? How are you looking at Florida State this year?
There is some undefeated 10-1 down there. I was checking down here at Circa. I would potentially look that way. I think that's the best number on the market.
And that does not include the ACC championship
Correct.
game.
Yeah,
So that's just the 12 regular season games.
That's just 12-0. I look at Florida State as a fairly bankable team if healthy, because I don't think they have a lot of outright weaknesses. I mean, their stuff that's maybe not elite is above average at almost all positions. They're a really veteran football team and very deep. Jordan Travis seems to have made strides every year that he's been in the program. And then they did go get some difference makers in the transfer portal. Keon Coleman, Dane Brugler had him 4th in the country in his NFL draft ratings. Like, that's a big-time guy to get, because now you got to defend Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman. They want to live in 12 personnel with a really good tight end they got from South Carolina. They still have Trey Benson as a back. And I think that they have about 8 offensive linemen who they would be very comfortable playing in the game, and much better defensive depth than they've had. What I don't know if they have is a lot of guys who will be like first round, top 50, top 75 type picks. I think you got a whole lot of guys on this ball club who will be 6th, 7th, undrafted free agents, priority free agents making a camp, right? Which you can win a whole lot of college football games with that. The question becomes, if you do get to the playoff, what happens if you run up against a Georgia that feels like they might break their own record, I was told, in the draft coming up that they set 2 years ago. Yeah.
Where do you have Jared Verse in your rankings? Because I've heard a lot of people say he's a top 5 guy in the upcoming draft. Some people have even said if it wasn't for the quarterbacks this year that he pushed to be the number 1 overall selected player.
Sean, he's pretty freaky. I mean, I don't know about top 5. I want to see what the measurables are as far as the length, but he's a workout warrior. Like, you watch this guy work out, he's going to do very well at the combine in the drills and when he has to go run. But he's still got a guy who was kind of raw last year. Like, there is some upside. I understand why he came back. I don't buy the idea that he was like a top 10 pick who decided to come back to school. That doesn't really, in my experience, that doesn't really happen. But I think he's a guy who has top 10 pick upside if he hits his ceiling.
So, go ahead, Sean.
I was just going to say, I recruited Jordan Travis.
Yeah.
I thought we had him. Brother was playing for the Blue Jays. We brought him on an official visit, but Power 5 happened. Then when he left Louisville, I thought we had him again. I've said this.
Who did you get, Sean? All I hear about is the guys who turned you down.
And they're all ballers, and they all went to Power 5 schools. And I still won AAC Recruit of the Year by Rivals. Having said that, I've always said this to Tim, and this is why I didn't like Cincy when they made it. This is why I didn't really like TCU. This will be the first, to me, off-brand team that gets to the college football playoff that has a quarterback that can overcome some of the other deficiencies.
I've always kind of thought that if somebody's going to break through, like I do the blue chip ratio, right? Mm-hmm. We did it on this show. They're not quite there. They're like the number one team that could bust it this year. When it's come close to being busted before, it was, thank God Nick Saban did that onside kick against Clemson the first time because Deshaun had him, right? You know, it was Marcus Mariota playing good for about 20 minutes against Ohio State, and then Ohio State took over. It's usually going to be a team that is really pretty close recruiting-wise, and then the quarterback, puts them over that mark. I think Jordan's a really good college quarterback. I don't know if he's an amazing NFL guy, but I think he can do a whole lot of things, especially with his legs and arm combo.
I was listening to your summer school Cover 3 podcast, by the way, on Michigan. And the beat reporter you had on, whose name escapes me.
Sam Webb. He was a great job.
Man, he was fired up about this team. He loved everything about him. Are they better than Ohio State?
I think they're more trustworthy. I don't know if they have the higher ceiling than Ohio State. Look, Ohio State scares me a little bit, both on the upside and the downside.
Yeah.
They needed to go to the transfer portal to get 2 tackles. Well, guess what? This was not a good year to have to do that. I mean, it's always hard to find tackles in the transfer portal, but
San Diego State tackles started for them.
I mean, that's who they took. Josh Simmons from San Diego State. I'm not saying he can't play, but that's not super encouraging to me. On the other hand, the other questions here are, can Jim Knowles get a defense right? Which, given their level of athleticism and it's his second year, I'm not going to bet against Jim Knowles figuring it out. And can Ryan Day get a quarterback right? Like, that's usually an answer that we give the thumbs up to, right, in college football. So if they're okay at tackle, I think they probably have a higher upside than Michigan because of the playmakers. But I think Michigan is more trustworthy right now.
Give me Ryan Day in the college football playoff. Y'all can have Jim Harbaugh.
Dude, the only teams Ryan Day loses to are college football playoff teams, basically.
Except Notre Dame on September 23rd. Please.
Well, this is y'all year, Sam Hartman.
I'm spending a lot of money to go to that game, guys.
I don't know who he's going to throw the ball to, Tim, but, I mean, the quarterback's really good.
Hey, all the Notre Dame fans on Twitter tell me that the receivers got a lot better in the second half of the year. I didn't watch the games, apparently,
We went over this the other day. I was like, Michael Mayer was the whole passing game.
Well, when you have a MAC-level quarterback, no offense, Drew Pine, I know you got a family, but all right.
You know you like Tyler Buckner.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, we'll end with this. Thanks for bringing up Tyler Buckner. Alabama, 10.5 you could find if you want the under, 10 if you like the over. Your final 45 seconds, bud. Alabama this year.
I think I'd rather bet them for like a title future, because of the upside. I was going to pick LSU in the West, and I was going through. I'm like, all right, who's my top D end? Oh, he plays for Bama. Who's my top D tackle in the league? Oh, Jaheim Oatis. They got his weight right. I've seen this kid. He plays for Bama. Who's my top corner? Oh, Kool-Aid plays for Bama. Who's my top safety? Like, down the list. It's like, okay, Tyler Booker, kid from Jersey, played for IMG.
Yeah, I coached him. He's a good player.
Dude, I'm telling you,
the tackle, too, was at IMG.
I think Bama's ceiling is legitimately as high as it's been, with the exception of quarterback.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.